You're listening to Dr. Emma and me on the Tudors Dynasty and Beyond podcast. And now, here are your hosts.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm Rebecca Larson and it's Thursday. You know what that means. I'm joined by Dr. Emma today. Hi, Emma.
Hello, Rebecca. How are you?
Well, it's Thursday, so I'm always extra good on Thursdays. How about you?
I'm great. We already settled that Thirsty Thursday is my favorite day. So yes, I'm great.
I love that.
People are getting the wrong idea about my alcoholic tendencies, probably.
No, they're not. I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Just kidding, not. Okay, Parallel Lives. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Okay,
Yeah.
So this episode I'm really excited about because I feel like when we do these episodes, we always pick like an English woman or an Englishman and some random Spaniard. Not really.
What did you just say? That is the most offensive thing a Spaniard has ever endured.
I doubt that's the most offensive thing.
No, it's not. But you know how we take things that are offensive. Very, very seriously.
Okay, not random, but anyway.
Are you saying Catherine of Aragon is there some random Spaniard?
No, definitely not.
Okay, that's good. That's good for the show.
Last week, to me, I feel like last week was kind of a random one.
La Princesa de Eboli, girl, you need to up it up. If you don't know La Princesa, have you seen this woman with her eye patch?
I have. She is, if I could swear on this show, I would say that she is amazing.
You didn't even learn her name. Come on.
I know. I can't even pronounce it. Okay. Like, I'm trying. You got to, this is a slow. I speak German.
You're going to be so happy because we're going to talk about two women that you know a lot about and you've talked a ton about, right?
Yes. Yeah. One we know well, one we don't know as well.
Which one don't we know well?
It was just a joke.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Talk about yourself, sister.
Today we're going to be talking about the parallels between Anne Boleyn, who we really don't know at all, right?
Right. Who's that?
Who's that lady? And Kateryn Parr, who we know so well.
Yes. I think it's the fact that I know so well Catherine of Aragon made me have to study these two women because at the end of the day, they do go on to be the other wives of Henry VIII and queens of England. And you kind of have to, when somebody's sources disappear, like the sources of Catherine of Aragon, so many, you do have to study things prior to her and after her to see the changes, especially in art history. So I know these ladies quite well. I know one of them didn't like monkeys, for example.
Could that have been Anne Boleyn?
It could have been Anne Boleyn, yes. It was Anne Boleyn. And we've talked and joked about it several times. But Anne Boleyn is someone that I've studied a lot recently, especially preparing for the exhibition that is still running in the British Museum. 1 week left. So guys, run to the British Museum if you're in London because Faces for Eternity is running for 1 more week. And she's one of the leading figures in that exhibition of portrait medals, largely because the only known depiction of Anne Boleyn made during her lifetime that we have is that medal that is so interesting, the most happy medal and now for the first time, it's paired with one of Henry that it's his pair. But also in the exhibition, there's medals of her daughter, and especially that Phoenix medal. Sometimes these women in the other side would put faces, and the other side they would put symbols. And this Phoenix that Elizabeth uses to convey messages about rebirth and about really eternal life, and is linked to her mother, probably. And this is not something that I proposed. This is something I included in the exhibition because Sylvia Soberton brought it to my attention. So this is her work. In that sense, I like to honor, where things come, putting these things together, especially pairing that medal and finally getting Henry and Anne back together.
Finally getting them back together.
Yes, getting them back together. Because, they fought to be together.
Yeah, that's true.
fought hard and long to be together. And they ruined many people's lives to be together. So they should be together for eternity. So if you have time, go to the British Museum and the Monty Gallery. You'll be able to see that one more week. You go.
Exciting. Get there. Do it.
Yes.
Like you said, run, don't walk.
No. Oh, well, you're in London, so it depends a little bit. It's difficult to run sometimes. It's packed with people. Just be
Yeah.
patient in London and enjoy. In London, there's always something to see around, even if you are, if it's just the people, I love London. I've been going since I was a child, and it's probably one of my favorite cities in the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, there is a lot to see in London. It was overwhelming for me because I'm not used to being in such large cities and having so many people around. It was so
Okay.
crowded. That was a little overwhelming. But when you
Yeah.
you look around, there's just history everywhere. Everywhere.
hmm hmm I must say, of all the large cities, it's one of the ones, I mean, yeah, down where, the British Museum is and all that, it is always packed with people. But, for being such a large city, I've always felt very safe in London and
Hmm.
like it's very welcoming. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say the cities that are not as welcoming in Europe, but definitely London is a place. And then it's very boroughy, which is, if you live there, if you can afford living there, which is the only problem that it's so expensive, you do a lot of your life in your neighborhood. And when I was there, I wasn't there for long. I was there for 4 months doing a research stay. I just, getting to know your neighborhood and all that. People do a lot of stuff around their neighborhoods, and it's a cool, little mini city within the city. I don't know. I just love it so much. It's so many things to do. You're right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
much to do. Okay, so parallel lives, Anne Boleyn and
And
Catherine Parr. Obviously, the big one was they're both married to Henry VIII.
exactly. So second and sixth wife, right?
Yes.
Yes.
One wanted to marry him, the other one married him because she thought it was God's will.
Yes. I mean, I think both, in that sense, probably both thought it was God's will, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
that's
what
true.
the
Yeah.
what the king wants is God's will. So I think both in that sense were committed to duty, really, which is they were part of the circle of people, of courtiers of the king, who had to do, especially during the reign of Henry VIII, whatever the king wanted, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So even think about Jane Seymour and how she had to marry Henry VIII a week after Anne Boleyn was executed. How would it felt for a woman?
I
You
can't
know,
even imagine what that would have felt
yeah.
like.
It's like you see like her gowns being taken out and your gowns put in, and you're like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it must have been. You'd be like, the Jews can stay, thanks. And that's something that we do find parallels sometimes between the wives, and this is very. I know people love portraiture of the wives too, because Holbein gets involved in all that, and other artists. But the jewelry is something that we study a lot in relation to the inheritance of these jewels by women, the appropriation, because Anne Boleyn appropriates Catherine of Aragon's jewelry. There's a very famous row between Henry and Anne because Catherine still has the Queen's jewels, and Henry sends for them, and Catherine refuses a few times until she's like, this needs to be a direct order from the king, and the
Yeah.
king is, yeah. So then she does surrender her jewels. And she's funny because, for all we say that Catherine's so calm, we're talking Catherine of Aragon, not Catherine Parr yet, but I will mention why I said this in relation to what. Uh, when they're talking about this giving the jewels to Anne Boleyn, she calls her a few things that are not very nice.
Mm.
So
She
she
called,
wasn't that calm always.
so Anne Boleyn called Catherine.
No, Catherine called Anne Boleyn a couple of things.
Oh.
The scandal of Christendom was the lightest of the ones. Imagine what it must have been to give to your husband's mistress all your jewels that you brought from Castile that your mom gave you for your marriage.
Yeah, infuriating.
Infuriating. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for too.
Yeah.
And then, for example, Catherine Parr, in the case of her image, there's a very famous now, the first length portrait of an English queen that we have is Catherine Parr. She was identified because of the jewels she's wearing, right? Because these
Yeah.
dynastic jewels have meaning And we've talked about this even in the case of Isabel of Castile. I remind people that you still have time to sign up for that event that we have about Isabel of Castile, because really she is the one who starts with these dynastic jewels that are very connected to the Tudor court. So I'll talk about all about that. The connections between, for example, Anne Boleyn and Kateryn Parr to Isabel of Castile.
Yeah. And if you don't know what Emma's talking about, she's talking about live talk.
Most people don't know what I'm talking about at all times.
Well,
but if it's specifically about this event, Rebecca will explain. She's she's a logistics person.
Yeah. Well, October 25th, Emma is going to be doing a live chat about Isabel and her impact on the Renaissance, right?
Yes, because I see a lot of these things, especially I think one of the triggers for me, I have triggers sometimes. People are super surprised now, right? Talking about how Elizabeth I of England was a pioneering figure in the use of her image and her jewelry and her portraiture as a Renaissance queen. It made me just laugh and almost like spill my coffee out, because Elizabeth I learns from Isabel of Castile and other women, but largely from Isabel of Castile, because there's so much in Tudor England from Isabel of Castile because of the dowry of Catherine of Aragon and the 15 years of relations, 30 years of relations, international relations, with diplomatic relations, with exchanges of portraits and all that. Of course, she was a role model for her. And I don't think people know that. I think people are starting to understand, and people know the importance of Isabel and Fernando in kind of the European importance in the world, right? They were really at the core of that first the modern world. But in the case of England, people still think that Elizabeth just comes up with all these ideas and she's just so pioneering. She's not.
Right. I think the idea is that Elizabeth, being Anne Boleyn's daughter, must have hated Catherine of Aragon and all that she stood for, including her lineage.
No, because we know just a little snippet, but people will have to sign up for the event to know more about this. Elizabeth I had two portraits of Isabel of Castile. One of them is in the Prado.
Ooh, okay, guys. So you can't miss this event that'll be coming up on the 25th. There'll be a link in the show notes for you to get some more information on that.
What if there's a portrait of Elizabeth I in the Prado? Maybe I'll talk about that in the event.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, back to parallel lives. But it's still related because Elizabeth I is Anne Boleyn's daughter.
Yeah.
But Anne Boleyn, because of Henry VIII, doesn't get to raise her daughter, right? Obviously, because she, and then he goes on to have other wives.
A few.
So the last one, Kateryn Parr, she does have this is Anne Boleyn and Kateryn Parr, but it's just to show how connected the six wives are in many ways and respects. Kateryn Parr is named Catherine because of Catherine of Aragon, because her mother is Maud Parr, a very, very important figure in the court of Catherine of Aragon. And I know this because she would get her apartments next to the Queen at all times. Yeah. And the proximity to the Queen or the King means that you have good favor, right? We've talked about other women like Maria de Salinas, but Maud Parr was English, so the connection between the Parrs and when they come from and the Queen's lands and Catherine of Aragon is what makes really that connection to Catherine Parr. And then Catherine Parr, I think, has Catherine of Aragon as a role model as Queen Consort, for sure.
I'm sure.
Even though she's, and again, I would ask people to rethink the one is a Catholic and the other one's an Anglican. There's things that the Anglicans are not that far from the Catholics to start with.
Right.
And the role models are still role models. They still have other people in the past, in the Catholic past, as role models. That we need to start thinking that there was more connections between them. And just because Henry decided to marry Anne and break with Rome and kill Thomas More and a bunch of other people, doesn't mean that people, even Elizabeth, would appreciate someone like Isabel of Castile, Catherine of Aragon, and what they did in terms of giving visibility to the women in court and educating women, because Catherine Parr is above all a humanist queen, an educated queen.
Mhm.
Without Catherine of Aragon, there wouldn't be Kateryn Parr.
That's true. That's
And
very
without Catherine of Aragon, there wouldn't be Anne Boleyn. So this is not parallel lives. This is an episode about Catherine of Aragon.
How does this always happen? I'm trying to refrain from talking about Thomas Seymour every 30 seconds.
Why I'm like trying to talk more about Mary the First and Isabel of Castile, because otherwise all I'd be talking about is things like, I don't know, Catherine of Aragon.
Right, right. It's your specialty. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're passionate about it.
But then again, there's parallel lives. When I was preparing for this, it makes you think, oh, by the way, if anybody's interested in all these six wives and all that, are you ready?
I am ready.
Because we both have the catalog for six lives. And, I went to see this wonderful exhibition last year at the National Portrait Gallery, curated by Dr. Charlotte Boleyn, one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Yes.
She was kind enough to show me the exhibition. I flipped out with all the things that I had, studied for years and years and finally saw. And, people, we'll talk about parallels today, but people can go to that catalog and you'll see parallels,
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
both Renaissance queens, both Anne and Kateryn Parr, but also Catherine of Aragon. A little bit less, obviously, in other queens, like, for example, Catherine Howard, because she was very young. And, we still have to be careful with the six wives and all that. But it's very interesting to see the continuity, for example, between Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn. But then the connections between, for example, Mary Tudor after the death of her mom, Catherine of Aragon, and Catherine Parr.
Yes, they were very close.
Yes, and that portrait that we've said of the full-length portrait of Catherine Parr, identified as her because she's wearing a dynastic jewel connected to her that is inside of the inventories, which is a great place to go to if you're interested in portraiture, is connected to that other portrait which is one of my favorite portraits of all time, Lady Mary Tudor, the future Mary the First, a portrait that we know that she commissioned, and the same artist painted the Mary one and the Catherine Parr, Master John.
Oh, I love that Mary one. That is it's so colorful. It's just so vibrant and beautiful. And
Why is it colorful? Think about it.
I'm gonna let the
Because it's
artist.
got a blue background, maybe?
Yes, it does have a blue background.
Oh, and what other things have blue backgrounds? And inscriptions, and are little and around. I'm going to study them in Yale.
I think you want me to say miniatures.
Good job, Rebecca. You listen when I talk about miniatures nonstop. Miniature portraits have the same format. And that is a very expensive pigment. So it's talking about luxury too. It's azurite. And it gives that very, very, and Holbein uses that too in his Anne of Cleves.
Yes.
And in that picture of Henry VIII that is in the Museo Thyssen-Bornemisza in Madrid. So these come from the illumination of manuscripts, these very vibrant pigments that the Horn boots, for example, introduce. And you can see them in the manuscripts they illuminate too, a lot in the use, for example, when they are coloring the drapes of the Virgin. She's usually dressed in blue. So that azurite is used. And then have you noticed that in the case of this portrait and the one of Mary that is linked to the one of Catherine Parr, there is an inscription in gold, just like the miniatures have, which is very important because first of all, in the case of Mary and in the case of Catherine of Aragon, those two portraits, an inscription is just giving us the name of the person. So it's like you can identify the sitter, which is incredible, but it gives key information. The miniature portrait of Catherine of Aragon in that same collection says that she's the wife of Henry VIII. And in the case of the one of Mary, says that she's the daughter of Henry VIII. So it's a political message. In the case of the one of Catherine Parr, it doesn't have an inscription, but it was to match one of the king, because look at, for example, the way she is standing on one of those carpets that appear in a lot of Holbein. So they're all connected. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They're all connected to the portraiture that Holbein is producing for Henry VIII. But listen to this. These two pictures are painted the year after Holbein dies.
Oh, interesting.
My theory is that Susanna Horenboot went from painting miniatures to these paintings, and it's really her who painted these. And her husband, John, is the one who was paid by Mary for drawing her face. He's paid £5 for drawing, probably for translating one of Holbein's sketches of Mary, the one that survives. And it's the same model. She's wearing the same jewel. So there's connections between all these artists. That's what I'm saying.
Interesting.
And Holbein does the only two alleged sketches of Anne Boleyn that we have, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, Holbein knew these women very well, knew Anne Boleyn very well, and he did. And again, this is a wonderful catalog if anybody wants to know more about these women. But here, for example, in the section about Anne Boleyn, I learned so much about her through this. There's designs of jewels with H and A.
Yes.
And there's a cup that was designed for, no, there was a design for one of the triumphal chariots for the coronation of Anne Boleyn, but there's also a design for a cup for Jane Seymour, right? So studying the women, the parallel lives of the women, but the parallel lives of the artists and the relation to these women has always been very fruitful for me. And that's why I've studied both Kateryn Parr and Anne Boleyn in relation to a lot Catherine Marron, but a lot Mary, to know what Mary does as a patron of the arts during her reign. I need to know what happens to her after her mother dies, right?
Yeah.
And well, before she dies, even what is her relationship to Anne Boleyn? What is her relationship to Kateryn Parr? What we know about Kateryn Parr, we know that Holbein painted Anne Boleyn and sketched Anne Boleyn, but we know that Kateryn Parr, for example, inherited from her mother miniature portraits of Henry and Catherine of Aragon. So this whole thing about the court getting a face with Holbein and the Horenboots and all that it's because Catherine saw that as a child in Castile and Aragon, and then was doing this with Henry while she was trying to marry Mary to Charles, and all those things we've talked about, the Habsburgs and the Tudors, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are all connected. And then the women, because they're raised in that new court, the Catherine Anne Boleyn, is sent to Margaret of Austria and Claude. So, too, they get this very refined humanist education. But also someone like Kateryn Parr gets a refined education because Catherine of Aragon has changed the court in England.
Yeah.
So I think they're both very similar in the sense that they're both Renaissance women. And they think differently to the women from the previous generation. Very different. They have a mind of their own, don't they?
Yes, they sure do. That's what I respect of them during this time. I mean, they were kind of trailblazers. So let's, we talked briefly before this about Kateryn Parr being the first published queen, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing.
Being the first published queen in English. So let's say in English because there's other published queens before.
That's true. Yes.
And it's a religious text too. So we have to think of her as a humanist. I mean, humanism is linked to religion, even if you are Reformed, even if you are Anglican. In the case of Anne Boleyn, she plays a large role in Henry's transformation too, religious transformation. That's very important to know, that it's very important to her. And it's very convenient for her too, because she won't, there's no other way probably to get married to him other than breaking with Rome.
Yeah.
But I think it's also because she truly believes the Reformation is right, not just because she wants to marry Henry. I don't think someone just, I think it just goes hand in hand, really,
Yeah. I think Kateryn Parr picks up the torch from Anne Boleyn and tries to continue the forward progression of religion in England. But then there are people behind the scenes who get a little freaked out by that.
But in the sense of the religious reform and Anne Boleyn being a trailblazer, that's kind of true and not. What she is a champion of Reformation, not of religious reform, because Catherine was a champion of religious reform. Erasmus of Rotterdam who was a religious reformer of the Catholic faith, was one of Catherine of Aragon's best friends, and she was always asking for his advice. And she was one of the first women to commission answers to Luther. So she is involved in the forefront of what it is known later as the Counter-Reformation. So the Catholic Church is not just still here, just like, oh, these guys are super innovative and we're doing nothing here. They are, because they're responding to this quickly. They're saying, okay, let's have a talk about this. You're wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, Catherine of Aragon is a pioneer in religious reform too, because she's a humanist too. It's just their views are different. And the view is different because Anne can't do anything other than adhere to the idea that Henry has to be the one to decide. Otherwise, she's never going to marry him, right?
Yeah. Very, very true. Very true.
Yeah, it's complicated. It is though. It is the most famous thing probably that she did, really, other than having Elizabeth, obviously, who went on to be one of the most famous English monarchs, but really to both of them to just go as far as that, right? For their relationship to prosper. In the case of Kateryn Parr, she's just in a new time, really. But listen to this. There's a source in Spanish, and I've never talked about this. Maybe I shouldn't. Well, yeah, I'm going to talk about it. There's a source in Spanish that says that Catherine of Aragon authored 3 works in Latin.
Oh, this is new.
Yes.
This is the bomb drop for the episode.
Yes. The Franciscan source that said that she authored 3 books. One of them has the same name as the book written by Kateryn Parr.
Really?
Yes. So I have a theory that Kateryn Parr, yes, she could have been the author, or maybe she was translating from Latin, from Catherine of Aragon's text.
Oh, well, that just shatters everything, doesn't it?
No. It just means the author is a different person. He was a great translator.
Well, and that was one of the
Why
things.
would some Franciscan source lie in the 17th century about it?
Why?
Why would they?
Well, so let's talk about that, because let's look at Catherine Parr's relationship with Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn, and how she helped to teach her language and do translations. And she was just a magnificent teacher for her.
And Mary Tudor too, who translates, whose first Latin teacher is Catherine of Aragon. Sorry to bring her up again.
No, you're not.
And listen to this. I've read now in different places, and it makes sense to me because there was a Spanish grammar book, 2 Spanish grammar books in Beaulieu Palace where these children were raised, that Elizabeth I could speak Spanish.
Oh.
So no excuse for English people not to pick up a Spanish grammar book and start to learn some Espanol.
I feel like you're looking at me.
No, you're not English. You're American. You need to learn Spanish to see the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, I have to.
I'll send you some lyrics. No, yeah, so these are also European figures, Anne Boleyn goes to the court in so it speaks a lot of French. We see these women as very English, but these people are trying to be humanist, Renaissance princesses, queens. They're English, but they're also something else, right? And in that sense, I think that's why they are also like, well, there's a very good source that says when the Queen of England, Elizabeth of York, asks Isabel of Castile to the fact that because Margaret of Austria is in Spain, for her to teach Catherine of Aragon French so she can speak to Arthur when she arrives to England, she mentions that none of the women in the court spoke Spanish or Latin. Yet you have Catherine Parr translating from Latin, Elizabeth translating from Latin, Mary Tudor, the daughters of Thomas More. Why? Because Henry VIII taught the women how to translate from Latin. or was a champion of that. Come on.
Here we go. Just going to bring
It
up.
was Catherine Varron with Thomas More, with Erasmus of Rotterdam, with Thomas Linacre, with Juan Luis Vives, with a lot of men. But these men are different. These men are in the educational system, right? They're humanists. They're not kings. Henry was just, doing his thing, hunting, doing his things.
I knew these two women had both been married to Henry VIII. They were both born and raised in.
And for that, we are sorry, ladies.
Right. We are so sorry. I feel like we have to talk about love.
Oh, yes.
Can we talk about love in these women? Because I want to talk about Thomas Seymour.
Go ahead, girl. Talk about beards, love, whatever you want.
Beards, talk about those beards. No,
I'm gonna bring up a beard in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, you make it sound like every conversation I try to bring up beards. I don't.
It's like me with Catherine Varron. It's her Achilles. How do you call that in English?
Tendon.
Yes, Achilles tendon. Beards are Rebecca's Achilles tendon.
They are. Yeah, they are. No, stop distracting me.
Okay, Thomas Seymour. Was he in love?
We look at Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn at the beginning as a love story, right?
Yeah.
And then when we look at Catherine.
Love story or obsession?
Well, it may be an obsession.
Different things.
Maybe that's the same thing with Kateryn Parr and Thomas Seymour. Like Kateryn Parr became widowed, and very quickly Thomas Seymour came into the picture before it all happened in such close succession, where her husband died and she married Henry VIII. And then we find out in between there that she wanted to marry Thomas Seymour if she had had the chance.
Right.
And I love that part of her story.
I mean, girl, have you seen Thomas Seymour's portraits? I mean, you wrote an article on it, didn't you? And you heard about Henry VIII in the 1540s, right? And what he looked like. And I mean, come on, let's be honest.
Right. Yeah. Thomas Seymour was handsome and he was charming and athletic, and he had all of the qualities that probably interested Kateryn Parr after, she had been married a couple times already.
So, girl, Catherine, I get it. And duty, right? And Anne was in love before she married Henry too, right?
Yes, she was.
So was she in love with Henry, or was Henry infatuated with Anne, and Anne decided it was in her best interest to just?
I wish we had Anne's letters to Henry so that we could really see what she was saying instead of just his side of the story.
Leave me alone.
I keep telling you. Oh, I'm not interested.
Bloody sickness or whatever. I have everything. Don't contact me, dude.
I think I have the plague.
Yes. I've got all sorts of things going on. Oh, sorry. Can you imagine?
I feel bad for Kateryn Parr that she got Henry VIII at the end when he was all fat and stinky and irritable.
Yes. Fat, stinky, irritable. Yeah, I feel good for Catherine, who got the young, athletic, handsome, prince, who was like, "Let's do this together, girl." And she was like, "Sure," And then, so I never buy the Anne was in love with Henry thing. She was in love before. She probably thought. I mean, I think power, influence, power at court, and all those things give you a sense of probably. And I mean, one of the things that you were talking about, and a parallel came up to my brain very quickly, is we do know that Henry VIII sends a ring to Anne with his picture, right?
Oh, I don't know that I know this.
Yes, there's a reference in his letters that he's sending her a picture. I mean, he's sending her a ring with his picture. And you mentioned about Thomas mentioning a miniature, right? He wanted to. So these men want to see the pictures, or want them to have pictures of them. This picture exchange between lovers is very interesting too, because then probably you would look at your little picture while you were reading the letters,
Yeah, I imagine Thomas Seymour holding a little miniature of Kateryn Parr, and daydreaming about her and having a little tryst with her in secret. And it's like, if you guys only knew what plays in my head about their love story, whether it was a love story or not, I'd like to think that it was. It was for her for sure. She.
There you go. And yes, and I think that love looked a bit different at the time for a man too. Men just behave differently because it was a different time. It was 500 years ago. It's not, men were expected but I think courtly love is something important. I think Thomas Seymour is part of that culture of courtly love too, that Henry also participates in. It's just the women have to be careful because courtly love then, it's for with everyone, not just with you. All the ladies in the realm of Henry VIII. So I think it must have been really, really hard. One of the things that Kateryn Parr definitely didn't have to endure that Anne Boleyn did, and this is it's not a parallel. I don't think by the time Henry was married to Kateryn Parr, he had a wandering eye anymore because he didn't have a wandering anything. What was he? He was disgusting. What did you say he was?
He was fat and stinky and irritable. It's true,
well,
right?
I mean, I can relate to that. No, but in the case of Anne Boleyn, what she did have to endure is being in the same position as Catherine of Aragon when she's pregnant and Henry starts to be like, nah, you know what? I wanted to marry you, but now that I'm married to you, that other woman is looking very cute.
Yeah.
So that must have been a hard pill to swallow for Anne.
Well, he wanted what he couldn't have.
Exactly. And I think Anne gives a lot of Juana the First of Castile vibes when she reacts to these affairs of Henry. She's not very happy, is she?
No,
she starts threatening everyone left and right. Hey, fun guy, you're not going to be so much fun when I'm finished with you, right?
Right. She starts kicking people out or trying to kick people out of courts and,
exactly. She's giving signs of what, being in an abusive relationship does to you, like paranoia. I think she's just, and she's not wrong because what happens to her, especially when you have a child, and it's a girl. As soon as, and this is the sad and the very kind of weird thing about Henry VIII, as soon as Elizabeth the First was born, Anne was doomed.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, that was what, Henry was like, been here before.
Yeah, I don't have time to waste.
Yeah, you're gone. Where's that Jane Seymour gone?
I know. I feel like there will be people who will argue with us on this because they think it was bigger than just that. It was bigger than just she gave him a daughter and couldn't give him a son. But I do think that is a major
people that
part.
think that Anne slept with her brother too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there's people for everything. And that's what, she was accused of. So maybe, that was what happened. Who knows? We don't know. We know what we're told, and we're not told. I mean, who is going to believe those type of accusations, right?
Yeah.
But who is in the head of Henry VIII? Or even Anne? Is Henry starting to think that Anne is behaving in a way that he's not going to be able to control? Like Fernando of Aragon did with his daughter, and finally, and it's the problem when you're a woman and you don't behave. That doesn't happen to Kateryn Parr, and that's why she's the one to survive him, right?
Yeah, well, she came
even
close.
Though she's in love with someone else.
Yeah. Kateryn Parr was so intelligent and wanted so much of the Reformation in England to move forward, but Henry was resistant, right? So that was, the reason why she almost probably lost her head. She came so close to having the same fate as Anne Boleyn, but I feel like Kateryn Parr had this, I just want to say like this calmness about her where she was smart enough, not saying Anne Boleyn wasn't smart, but she was smart enough to be able to be submissive to Henry so that she could get her way.
I wonder where she learned that from.
Catherine of Aragon, possibly?
Well, and remember that we've spoken about this. It's larger than submission related to Christianity, which is true. And Juan Luis Vives writes about this. But remember that Juan Luis Vives also writes a manual on Stoicism. for Mary Tudor. So being stoic means that you're only judged by your actions, not by the actions of others and how they make you feel and how you react to those. They can make you feel really bad, but you have to have a brave front and you have to be a stoic person and you have to smile always and you have to be like, I'll wait for my turn.
Yeah.
And that's why Henry trusted Catherine Parr to be a regent, just like he did with Catherine Marron, because he knew she could hold her horses and control her temper. And he was like, kind of like, maybe she'll do what the other one did when I was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
She could have, I think. I think Catherine Parr was that type of woman too. She had that president. I'm sure she knew about it. I mean, she was born the year before that happened. She was
That's
born in
right.
1512. We don't know when Anne Boleyn was born. That's also important to know. We don't know the age difference between these women. Isn't that crazy? The day that someone finds this final document that tells us when Anne Boleyn was born, and we know really at what age,
Yeah, all of
everything
that
happened for
happened.
her.
We
Yeah.
we have to go back for those who maybe don't know what we're talking about when we say she was born before 1513. Why don't you let everybody know what happened in 1513?
Oh, one of my favorite parts of history is in 1513, Henry VIII decides that he's going to do a military campaign. And he's joined the League of Cambrai thanks to his very, very talented diplomatic wife called Catherine Aragon, with Fernando of Aragon and Emperor Maximilian against the King of France, because we all hate the King of France, right? That's what we've all
Right.
agreed. And that's why we're allies. So I'm talking about them, right? So then Henry goes to the continent to fight with Maximilian against the King of France, and he conquers a couple of cities. But back home, he leaves Catherine of Aragon as regent. And while she's regent there, the King of Scotland, who's the ally of the King of France, James IV of Scotland, invades England from the north, and he didn't go very well because Catherine just does the most formidable military campaign in the reign of Henry VIII and just destroys the Scottish army, and has the biggest military victory in the reign of Henry VIII that paves the way really for the union of Scotland and England. So this was a huge deal in England. At the same time that the previous year, her dad had conquered Navarre for Castile. So this is the League of what is known as the League of Cambrai, not known as much known in the Tudor world. This League of Cambrai is really reshaping the map of Europe, and Catherine of Aragon participates with that. So, and James IV is killed.
Who
So
is also Henry VIII's brother-in-law.
yes, and yes, and Margaret Tudor ends up being a regent, and she doesn't do a very good job.
No, she doesn't.
But why? Is she less smart than Catherine of Aragon and Catherine Parr? No, she's just not been educated.
Yeah. Right. And she's living in a foreign country. So who's going to believe an English woman or follow an English
Well,
woman?
who's going to follow a Spanish woman into battle?
Yeah,
Well,
that's true. Okay. Good point.
it's I think is the charisma that education and empowerment gives you. When your mom is the most famous queen in the world and raises you and is every day is like, God has chosen you to be Queen of England, so you better do a good job, or you let me down. In a smaller scale, your mom is a lady of waiting to the Queen of England. Maud Parrin is like, you better, we're it's the same thing. We are the Parrs. We're not anyone. We're close to the Queen. We're close to the King. So there's a lot of pressure on these women. But education, giving them education, teaching them Latin, teaching them, especially Catherine with diplomacy. And then once a woman is doing that, she just changes how the other women, especially the women being raised in that generation, see women in power. I mean, there had been the president of other women in power, powerful women in England very shortly, and even in the birth of the Tudors with Margaret Beaufort, right?
Yeah.
She's a president in England. So that would have been a very good also role model for Anne Boleyn and Catherine Parr. It wouldn't just be, I'm not saying just Catherine of Aragon and Isabel of Castile. I'm saying there's a lot of powerful women at the end of the 15th century and the beginning of the 16th century. So no wonder Anne Boleyn and Catherine Parr have minds of their own.
Yeah.
no Latin, no languages. Our courtiers are sexy women and know how to do it all. And they even
Yes.
have a musical.
That's right. They do have
Have
a
you
music.
seen Six the Musical?
I have not.
Oh, I'm afraid I have.
Is it coming to Minneapolis?
It came to Minneapolis last year, girl, in the summer.
Oh.
So
I must have been busy golfing and
yes,
kayaking.
yes. But in London, I mean, if you ever have the chance, it is such a because it speaks to this like empowerment of like the women in the life of Henry VIII. We know about them because they had minds of their own, and in my opinion, it's because of the education that the humanist movement brings. So without men allies, like especially the humanists, right? These kind of like churchmen, but also learned men in universities and like Juan Luis Vives, like Erasmus of Rotterdam, who said that Catherine of Aragon was far more educated than Henry VIII ever was. That was Erasmus again, who knew them both.
It must be true.
He never said anything about Anne Boleyn, though.
Hmm.
Hmm. I
Curious.
know who said a lot of things about Anne Boleyn. The imperial ambassador everybody hates. And nobody uses as a source. This is one of my biggest Troy horses in research. Why do you dismiss Chapuis? Like he's what the other ambassadors are not biased? The English ambassadors are not biased in Spain, or the French ambassador in Spain is not biased. Come on.
Yeah, that you know
How
what? That's a great point. And I think I am just as guilty of that when it comes to my Thomas Seymour research with different ambassadors too, because you look at it and you go, well, clearly they're biased because they hated England or whatever, but there has to be some truth in what
I
they're
love them.
writing.
My favorite ambassadors are my favorite. I think it's one of my frustrated careers. I'm not diplomatic enough to be an ambassadress, but I would love to be one because it's such a cool thing. What I like about they give us a different perspective on a culture, you know. So yes, they're biased because they're coming from a different culture.
Oh
They're
my
serving
gosh.
a different king, but they're giving us key information. I love the descriptions of the Tudor court that ambassadors give
Yeah,
us.
we have to do an episode just on ambassadors, I think.
The especially the Italian ambassadors are my favorite. Juicy details, descriptions of everyone. If they had a
Yeah.
mole, they would tell you. If something inappropriate was said, they would mention it. I love it.
Are you familiar with Vanderdelft?
Yes,
Okay, we're gonna have to talk about him sometime because I
yes,
have all
yes.
kinds of opinions. So we definitely have to do an episode
And
on.
Chapuis. Chapuis was a very interesting figure. Really, this is one of the a term that everybody loves now, gaslighting. No, the gaslighting that a lot of the Tudor Anne Boleyn experts want to do when they say Chapuis was so bad. The poor guy was trying to save this Catherine of Aragon's life and Mary Tudor's life. They were gonna kill them. They were like threatening their lives. They were
Right.
saying, "We're gonna kill these ladies," and he's like, "I was sent here by Charles V. He's gonna kill me if I go back and I tell him that they're both dead."
Yeah, that would be unfortunate, wouldn't it?
And it's a bit dangerous for me to be here, but he was so committed and he felt so bad. His descriptions of Catherine just bring me to tears sometimes because he's like, this woman, I can't believe how she has the resilience to endure this, knowing that and, he was the one to say and her doctor that she was poisoned.
Yes. Yes.
So, and he proposed to Mary an escape plan. And Mary said, Chapuis, you're very cute, but you don't realize I can't ride that far in 3 days. So, because they were going to kill Mary too.
Right.
So, do you think Anne Boleyn poisoned Catherine of Aragon?
I don't
Or
know.
was it Henry?
I could have been anybody, honestly, anybody who was for their cause and on their side. I do think something happened.
Me
I
too.
mean, the poor woman. I feel so bad for Catherine of Aragon.
I do
She,
too. I feel worse for Mary the First because she knew that happened. She was told about this escape plan. She was beaten up. She was done all sorts of things, yet she had to recant. She had to accept the extra supremacy that her father was the head of the church, all those things that mortified her. Then all the thing with Anne Boleyn happens. And one of the things that I would like to point out about Mary is her relationship with Elizabeth. Everybody says, oh, it turned out very sour. For years, she supported Elizabeth, even though she was the daughter of the woman who had destroyed her life.
Yes.
And that was all because of her mother's teaching of, you're a Catholic, you have to pardon your worst enemy.
Yeah.
That's the way it
have
works.
Compassion.
And that is your sister. I mean, not that Catherine knew, because by the time, but that was her. So she knew. She was all about legitimacy too, right?
Yeah.
So it's crazy how the connections between these women go far beyond. I would like to know a lot more about if Mary was a matchmaker and if Kateryn Parr ended up with Henry VIII because of Mary.
Oh, there has been discussion that Kateryn Parr was in the household of Mary and that's how she met Henry, but I don't think there's any evidence to back that up.
Yeah, but the women are very connected in many ways. So I wouldn't rule out, like I told you, those pictures are painted just a year after Hans Holbein dies.
Yeah.
And one is commissioned by Mary. We know that. She does give gifts to Kateryn Parr. They have a close relationship, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, right,
if she said, "Hi, Dad, look, this is my new friend, Catherine." Her name is Catherine. Remember? Catherine, your first wife, the best one.
That way you won't forget her name.
Look at the pictures she had. She got from her mom. Look, show her. Show him. Show him.
Show
You look so young. You look so young.
Show him.
Dad, show him. Show him. Can you imagine that? And that's why probably she commissioned also that picture of Kateryn Parr. And think about this. This was to be added to the collection of pictures of the wives of Henry VIII, sorry, by Holbein, but Holbein dies.
Yeah.
You know who else has a picture? Gallery with pictures of all of his wives? Philip II of Spain.
I knew that one.
I've been looking into that, and Mary appears in the Alcázar. The portrait that is now in Alejandro Vergara's collection in the Prado Museum, where she's sitting down with a rose, appears in the inventory with the pictures of the other wives of Philip and a picture of Philip. So I believe that these pictures with the blue backgrounds that we've talked about of Kateryn Parr and one of Anne Boleyn, but probably destroyed later, with the sketch of Holbein that is in the British Museum. This was part of Henry's gallery in Whitehall, all these pictures of his wives with him. So, and Mary commissions that. Why in 1543, even though Holbein is just dead? Because she's backing the succession.
Yes. And we would like to say thanks to Kateryn Parr, but I'm not sure how much.
Well, that's what I'm saying is a partnership there. It's not one woman doing all, or the other woman doing nothing, or Henry doing it all. They're all connected. They're all working together, and they have projects. And Mary is like, "You help me, girl. I'll help you, girl."
I imagine them like sitting around a fire, cross-stitching or whatever, and plotting. How can we do this? How can we get Dad to do what we need him to do?
Yeah. And then Catherine would be like, "I got a letter from Thomas." And Mary's like, "I don't know. I don't like beards. I'm just like my mom."
Yeah. No, Mary was very upset with Catherine when she married Thomas Seymour in secret.
Yeah, because it's secret. It's probably she felt betrayed. Catherine has the same reaction when her lady in waiting marries a banker, without her knowledge and without telling her. I think it's a betrayal of the trust that is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because Mary, even though Kateryn Parr was queen consort, Mary was
heir
in line to the throne. So, girl, we're friendly, but remember your place.
Yeah, exactly. And then Kateryn Parr names her daughter with Thomas Seymour, Mary.
Of course, because, and I see this over and over, these people that make, like Mary Rose Tudor when she marries Henry Cavill, I'm not going to call him Charles Brandon anymore. When she does that, she does things to make her brother. trying to make amends. So what better way than naming your child, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, it's a way of protecting that child. Think about Kateryn Parr and how lucky she was that Catherine of Aragon was her godmother. It was that important that when her mother died, she receives the pictures, something that is nobody has in England. And she also receives, and I almost forgot about this, but it could be the one that she's wearing in that picture. She also receives a rosary. A rosary that had been from Catherine of Aragon, made with, they say, with a type of wood that only comes from America.
Oh. Oh.
And if you go and see that picture of Catherine Parr in the National Portrait Gallery, that it's a full-length picture that we've talked about, there's faces in the beads have you seen that?
Yes, I have. Yes, I've forgotten all about that.
Susanna Horenboot, because I've told you that I think that it was Susanna who painted that. I think it was her. She collaborated with her husband, and her husband probably would transfer the sketch of Holbein, and then Susanna gave the color, and that's why it's got so many similar colors to the miniatures. So she would have added these faces in the little beads to show probably that maybe this was the one that she inherited from Maud Parr. Isn't this so cool? The will of Maud Parr is available, by the way. This is a great.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So if you want to have a look at a will, which is a very interesting place, you can find many connections, anyone interested in these things. Go and have a look at the will of Maud Parr, and you'll see there the references to. It's so cool. I just love this so much. The connections between. Sometimes people find inventories like boring. I just love them because then they remind me of the pictures when I find stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we're rounding up to the end of the episode here, and I think the biggest parallel is that these two women died earlier than they should have died
because of Henry.
Well,
no, not because of Henry. One of them because of Henry for sure. The other one because being a woman was very, very, very hard, right? So do you want to remind everyone how Catherine Parr dies? Because we've talked about it.
So Catherine Parr, as far as we know, was never pregnant until she met Thomas Seymour. And then by that time, she was already in her 30s, kind of old to be getting pregnant during that time. Yes. And this was something that I find interesting, and Thomas was concerned about, probably because he lost his sister to childbed fever. And he had written a letter to Catherine Parr saying something like, make sure that you stay fit so that our child can crawl out of the little mouse hole, or some weird thing that he said. I don't remember. I might be quoting it wrong. It's been a while.
I hope you are.
I'm going to have to look it up again. But he I believe I just said that. Okay, anyway, strike that. So he was obviously worried about her and whether or not she would survive childbirth.
Yes.
And she gave birth to their daughter Mary on August 30th. And then suddenly she started to become ill and had all of the symptoms of puerperal fever. And unfortunately, she died like 5 or 6 days later, leaving little orphan Mary with her father. And then her father died about a year later. He was executed for treason. And then poor little Mary just kind of like disappears from the record 2 years later.
Yikes.
It's just such a sad story. But in the end, if you think about it, if it was this love story, they all ended up together in the end.
Well, yes. And it's such a typical story, too, because a lot of men were executed for treason, a lot of powerful men. So, I mean, starting with the Duke of Buckingham in the first years of the reign of Henry VIII,
Yeah.
But a lot of women died in childbirth. I mean, Jane Seymour and Mary Tudor, Mary the First of England. This thing about phantom pregnancies, a woman that is a virgin at 37 and starts to have a married life and what that entails, which is sex, to have a child, and then is sick and has phantom pregnancies, probably is not having phantom pregnancies, probably is having some trouble because she is cousins with this guy who she's married and she's trying to have children with. Okay. Right. And she's 37 and all the pressure in the world is in there. One of the things that we should talk about in another episode, I know we're coming to an end, is Isabel of Castile we'll talk more about this in the event. I think this is very important. The relationship between the survival of women and the medicine in Spain.
Oh, yeah, that is definitely an episode that we'll have to do.
Yep.
Okay, so before we wrap it up today, there is something else that you wanted to talk about real quick about. So, okay, so for your Forging a Queen course, you had a bonus class that will be coming up all about this pendant, the Henry and Kateryn pendant, right? And there was just an announcement made about this, and I want you to tell everybody.
Oh, everybody remembers this. It's the heart-shaped pendant, gold, that was found in 2019. That's a long time ago now.
I
That's
know.
when my daughter was born.
Oh my gosh.
Someone, a metal detectorist, found this amazing, let's call it, it's a necklace, it's a gold chain, thick gold chain with a pendant that is like a hand that comes down, and it's full of enamel, so it also has good color, not just gold, and it has symbology of Catherine Parr and Henry VIII. On the one side, their initials tied with a lover's knot, which appear also in the Herrenboot miniatures, by the way. Just saying. And on the other side, a bush that is conformed of a pomegranate and a Tudor rose. So, I mean, they were like, oh, I think it's related to Catherine Parr.
I think it might be.
So I know they contacted me many years ago, and for a long time I had to keep this in secret because this is a treasure. I mean, this is a very, very big discovery. We worked on this. It was announced some years ago, and now the British Museum is trying to purchase it. So they've started a campaign to fund the purchasing of this piece. Please, if you can donate, maybe Rebecca, you can add the to the show notes. They have a donation page, but also they have very good videos on what this artifact is and what it means. And now I want you to go to that donation page because they are telling us from when it is, and it's linked to not only Catherine Parr and Henry VIII, but also Mary Tudor.
Ooh.
So exciting. Dr. Rachel King, who's another one of the nicest people I ever met. She was in the opening of Faces for Eternity this past June, so July. So thank you, Rachel, for coming over. Dr. King is amazing, and she's done amazing work with this. She's a curator there at the British Museum, and she's one of the people who've launched this campaign because she has studied this piece. And I can't wait to know why she is now so sure of this, and I can't wait for them to raise the money to be able to have this piece. I held it in my hands. I've never been more nervous in my. I mean, maybe when I had my daughter. It was such a moment. It's such a wonderful piece. Everybody needs to see this, so it should be in the British Museum where everybody's going to be able to enjoy it. I can't wait. So if you can, please donate because it's a very exciting campaign. I think we're going to have to talk to Dr. Rachel King. She might have to come and talk to us.
I think that sounds like a
He's Rachel. I'll send her the link to this episode and be like, sorry, I put you on the spot.
I was just gonna say, we're not above begging, are we?
No. I'm right up to that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask her to come on the show. I'm very excited for this. And I want to spread the word because we do need to make everyone, chip in. And it's a very expensive piece, too. So they need to raise a lot of money. So any from whatever you can, it's going to be amazing. Go to that page and see, even the director is talking about it, the director of the British Museum. So, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So exciting. So exciting.
Very exciting. Well, Dr. Emma, thank you again for joining me for Dr. Emma and me today, where we talked about Anne Boleyn and Kateryn Parr. And I will see you again next week.
Okay. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Dr. Emma and Me. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review the show. It really helps more people find it. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you'll know as soon as a new episode drops. And if you'd like to support what we're doing, head over to Patreon and become a patron. You'll get early access, bonus content, and more. Thanks again for being here. See you next time.